My name is Jorge Salazar. I am the project manager for the Fresh Voices initiative of the Vancouver Foundation. I came to Canada as a refugee about 14 years ago through the government-assisted refugees program. And since I came to Canada, I've been working, well, I did all the jobs that I think immigrants do for a while, but because of my interest in this community and the social services sector, I started doing work with community processes, particularly about ensuring that young people have a say in decisions. So the real name of the Fresh Voices initiative is actually Fresh Voices from Long Journeys, Insights of Immigrant and Refugee Youth. And what it is a project housed by Vancouver Foundation in partnership with the Representative for Children and Youth of BC, which is the Advocate Office for Children and Youth of the province, where the idea is to ensure that young people from immigrant communities are also at the table of decisions that are being taken, particularly around decisions that affect their communities, our communities. So Vancouver Foundation has agreed to kind of be a convener. A lot of the work that we do as Fresh Voices is actually building on the work that other people are doing. Like, it is very much dependent on what schools are doing, what immigrant service organizations are doing, what neighborhood houses are doing, what all these different organizations who work with immigrant communities, which can be mainstream organizations or it can be immigrant services programs specifically. They're all doing work with communities. So particularly in the youth programming, then what we're encouraging people is to connect with them and asking them to, if they're young people interested in also having a say on systems change and policy change, if there is a need for it. In the last couple of years, we've been focusing on the system of education because it's the one system that people have been talking a lot about, particularly the ELL system, which was previously called the ESL system. So our work is, the Fresh Voice is pretty much like the idea of a convening space for young people, particularly to the youth advisory team, which is the YAT, who are the young leaders who kind of guide the process at the staff of the program, to have a say and to have access to people in government or using people who make decisions around the system. The direct engagement of young people happens through the youth advisory team, which is a group made of 16 to 20 young people, including some youth workers who are also support of the process and also very much part of the process. That group is Metro Vancouver specifically, but we are trying our best to make sure that the voices of other young people are included. In 2012, we went around the province and consulted with about 200 young people, all immigrant refugees themselves, about these same kind of questions, like what's working, what isn't working, what could do better, what could be done better. And from that 2012 consultation process that was kind of youth-led, young people asking young people what they thought of how their immigration experience, a report came out in 2013 called the Fresh Voices Report that has a number of recommendations that that set of recommendations was guiding us today on the work we do. One of those recommendations was in regards to the ELL system. A lot of young people expressed how they don't feel sometimes that the ELL system is helping them advance, that in some ways it makes them feel like they're left behind. Some of that had to do with the way accreditation happens. Some ELL courses are accredited, some aren't. There is no consistency across the province on how ELL courses are accredited towards graduation. So we produce a campaign called the Make It Count campaign, which we're asking the Ministry of Education to make sure that ELL courses count towards graduation consistently across the province.
My name is Linda Chan. I came from Taiwan when I was 12 years old with my family. We immigrated here. I went through ESL classes in high school. I grew up here. I went to university here. I moved away to work a couple years actually, and actually that's when I kind of started to think about who I am, my identities. I came back, went back to school for education program, and after that I actually started working as a youth settlement worker to start working with immigrant youth. So in one way I feel like I can share my story with them and help them the way that I think it's needed. The youth I work with right now are defined in high school, so grade 8 to grade 12. Of course, right now we're seeing that after graduation, after 18 years old, they are considered adults, but we consider them as young adults. So we definitely think that from 18 to sometimes 20-ish, that is still considered youth, and they definitely need support in terms of transitioning into adult. From immigration status point of view, that there's different status that we work with. So some youth and their families are immigrants with immigrant status, or some of them have refugee status, or some of them are waiting for their status to go through. And then we know that sometimes that's a very difficult time for the youth and their families. And I work with a lot of international students as well. Usually that's where we see a lot of gap in terms of services as well, because there are a lot of agencies, most of agencies are not funded to serve international students.
Well, my name's Ashvan, and I came to Canada in 2012. The main reason why we moved here is because my parents wanted a better education for me and my brother. Before coming to Canada, we were living in India, and my dad had a very nice job, and we had everything. So the main reason why we came to Canada was just because my dad wanted a better education for us. So my story compared to a lot of other people, well, a lot of other people came to Canada because they were escaping violence, or we're looking for a safe haven, I guess. But for me, in terms of that, for me, my story is different because we just came here looking for education. So, yeah. So the YAT is the Youth Advisory Team at Vancouver Foundation, and we work around a lot of issues involving youth and involving immigrant and refugee youth. One of our biggest focuses has been making ELL, the ELL system, the courses that are offered in the system, make them count for credits. Currently, they're not. Whatever courses that an immigrant student takes when they come to Canada, they're not counted for credits. So what we're trying to do is, for example, a high school student in Canada, if they learn a new language, they get credits for it. However, when a migrant student comes to Canada, if they learn English, which is a new language for them, they don't necessarily get credits. So we're fighting for them to get credits to learn a language as well. So yes, that's what YAT is, and that's what our main focus has been so far. So far, in YAT, we organized our forum in December. So leading up to the forum, our main role was to plan and figure the details out. And our other roles also include going to other places and basically educating ourselves and people around us about these issues. Because a lot of people are a part of these systems, and they don't even realize that there is a problem and that we can do something. A lot of people feel helpless. So our main role is basically educating people and letting them know that, if we come together, we can make a difference. And that is why we organized the forum as well, to get this problem out there and let people know that things can be done if we get together. So ELL stands for English Language Learning. It was previously ESL, which is English as a Second Language Learning. So the YAD at Vancouver Foundation believes that a lot of migrant students that come to Canada, English is not necessarily a second language for them. It might be a third or even a fourth language that they're learning. So ESL isn't the right word that was being used. So the group petitioned for it to be changed, and we were successful in doing so, and we got it changed to ELL. So the forum was in the month of December, and at the forum we talked about a lot of different topics, like building bridges with other communities, other immigrant communities, Aboriginal communities, and then about family and immigration and gender and all other things, all the little things that concern immigrants. So we talked about those things. We invited panelists to speak about their journeys, and we invited people from the media to let our audience, to let people know how they can get their stories out there. And yeah, we basically shared our stories to inspire each other. And we also talked about our campaign of making ELL count.
I think the age, the experience, it's really different. I think back as my teenage years, like already as a young person, a lot of things we're already dealing with. So on top of that, leaving your home, leaving your friends, and leaving familiar surrounding, that must be really, really difficult. So that's difficult for adult as well. So for young person, for me, searching for identity and developing identity is definitely a great challenge for them, because that age as a youth is for them to find out who they are. So with all these changes, that is definitely adding on to the challenges. Definitely that we see some families relying on young people to help them because of either that youth are faster in adapting to languages or the systems. We do see that, but we also see that that is putting a lot of stress on the young people, for them to become more mature faster, because they're putting, they are given all these responsibilities that sometimes with peers at the same age that probably do not have to go through. So that's the difference.
Well, my name is Mallory. I am originally from Mexico, and I'm going to be turning 5 years in a month. So I'm currently in L.A. Madison Secondary School in grade 12. So I'm looking to graduate pretty soon from high school and enter university, hopefully. I guess my first language, it's Spanish, and I've been learning pretty much English since I was in grade 5. But of course, the real challenges comes once you come to, in a way, to Canada. I guess my story started back in grade 8, where I was able to meet a very involved youth, which I happened to know him by a really interesting circumstances. I was able to meet this young fella who invited me to a youth program, specifically for Latino youth, immigrant and refugee youth. So by me being able to, like, by him invited me and kind of me saying yes, I started to learn so many things, especially within the program, things that involve leadership and peer support skills. I was able to meet the people, including Jorge. I actually remember I met him through that program, and many other different youth leaders and youth workers who offer different kinds of programs or youth groups. So I guess it was a learning process of first, there was a lot of vocab and a lot of new ideas and thoughts and that I never heard of, because I was just growing from a child into the teenage age. So it was a new whole world and vocab and work that I was never, even volunteer work, that was something part of my culture, part of my everyday thing. So I guess I just started to do programs and see what opportunities there is for me to be involved and to basically what can I learn. One of a lot of holes within the school system, now school system wise, was what kind of support are teachers and counselors able to give you. Before my counselor was of not help at all, especially not able to speak English. Counselor as the least person helpful at all. Now that I'm able to speak up and say what is in my mind, now there is a different approach from the counselor. Before it was like, I'll tell you what to do. You don't. I know what you worry about. I know what you need, Marlo. So let me give you instead of. Counselors are supposed to tell you, are supposed to be there for what you need, right? So she was like, oh, I know what you need, so I'm just gonna give you whatever I think I need. And even choosing my own classes, she wouldn't let me. She would just give me whatever I can fit, whatever you can throw a ELL student at. I wanted to play music. In Mexico, I never had the opportunity to play an instrument, and I thought it was gonna be one of the coolest things ever. And she personally told me, no, you can't play an instrument because you don't speak English. You need to be focusing on learning English. And I was like, no, like why? But I was fortunate enough to have an ELL teacher who went to talk to the music teacher and the counselor itself, and I was able to take the music class without not previous music knowledgement, and I was able to succeed with a really good mark. So English wasn't really a barrier. Plus, music itself is another different language, and I think it sometimes underestimates us in terms of what we're capable of. One thing is speaking the language, another thing is being smart. And if I'm just learning the language, doesn't mean I'm not smart enough to be able to learn an instrument. So I think that's a lot of underestimate from teachers sometimes. Yeah, so they just gave me whatever classes they think I was going to need.
Yeah, when I came here, no one even told me that these programs were available. And basically, when I came here, I was just told that, you know, September 4th is the first day of school, just show up. And I was in grade 10, so it wasn't like I had an opening grade 8 ceremony where, you know, I got to meet everyone in our grade. I was just basically thrown into the school system, and I had to figure things out on my own without any help. And since I never went through the ELL system, I had no teachers necessarily helping me out. So I had to mostly figure things out on my own.
Youth settlement program at the neighbor houses, we provide program on site, and I know a lot of other settlement agencies also provide programs on site at the agencies, and also we provide program at the schools, so at the high schools themselves. So in that way too, also is to adapt to some of the situations we find immigrant youth are facing, that it might be difficult for them to travel further to other places, or that their parents are uneasy for them to go to other places. But if we are offering programs at school, that's easier to communicate to parents that your son or daughter are staying for program at school just an hour and a half later than their regular end of school time. We also take them out to around Vancouver, exploring their new home. So that's actually one of the most popular programming, because youth love going around to places. So we do have social activities going around Vancouver, cooking together, getting to know other immigrant youth, and sometimes we have a more intercultural programming where everybody gets together. Sometimes we're more specific, whereas it's only immigrant youth program, so that we have workshops, we have leadership training, so to help them integrate into the Canadian society.
I took some of the programs I took on from organizations were based on arts. So there is a media service program I was able to take, a popular theater one that was really helpful, a comic, drawing and visual arts, where where a lot of youth from around the world were able to come together and share the stories through a comic. So there was a lot of art involved that I think was really helpful, and kind of, I think I got really interested in that artistic kind of side, to be able to share our stories and to use the tools we have around us to be able to explore ourselves and our stories and learn from someone else, stories and learnings. But most of the programs mostly focuses on leadership skills and peer support, and yeah, so basically that would be the two different kind of type of programs. What really attracted me in coming was, first of all, they were offering free food. I mean, you can't say no to free food. Although you get tired of pizza every week, so be creative, people, on the food. No, it's still, to be more serious, I guess the artistic part really catch me on. Be able to explore things like drawing, media arts, theater. So, and I think that ability to meet other youth from the lower mainland, I think creates a nice bonding, and it creates friendships. So I always got interested of what can I learn from the program, but as well from others, and what kind of relations or friendships can I get out of there. So I think that it was really helpful in that part, because I understand I'm not alone on this, and I also understand that there's a lot of different stories of migration. So there will be times where there's two people that we share the same stories and we can bond. There are some times where I hear a totally different story and I get to learn from them. So either or, that's a great take on. Like that's a great thing I get to take from these programs. Another thing will be the learnings itself. There's so much things that I was never told about it, things that you're not get taught in school. So I guess that's another hole in the school system. You don't get to talk about these things that I found has been way more useful than starting to learn things like how to find the square root of certain numbers. You know what I mean? I feel that was more life skills, learnings, and knowledge that has been more helpful for me. So I guess using those skills and those knowledge mean for me to be able to understand myself and to be able to understand others, being more empathetic, and also be able to help people around me.
I think there is also a conversation to be had around the wholeness of programs. And I think, particularly because of funding constraints or the restrictions that come with funding, there's certain populations that we fall through the cracks. Like, we don't know, for example, just as, for example, we don't really see that much programs for refugees. We also don't really see programs ensuring that the general well-being of immigrant refugees are taken care of, or even just assessing the mental health state or the mental well-being of our communities. So, and it's kind of interesting because, of course, there's a cultural component here in regards to how we look at mental health. Because in some communities, mental health, the translation for that idea sometimes might be very clinical. But we know that these days, mental health can be expanded and it can be broadened around to understand the whole human being. But there's not as much, there's no outreach to be able to connect with diverse communities, to be able to also see how they interpret the idea of being healthy and be mentally healthy. And but it's also like very limited resources. There is a lot of funding restrictions right now on what programs are being provided to communities. So there's a bit of a challenge there too. That seems to be recurrent is around the issue of eligibility for clients in terms of ensuring that regardless of status, immigration status, young people can access schools or clinics or even an immigrant service agency. Like I think immigrant service agencies are struggling right now trying to navigate how they're gonna provide a service for a young person or for their family who might not fall into the funding category that they are allowed to serve. And I think we also hear this in schools. Like we hear schools are also struggling with the idea because some of their partnerships that they had in order to serve immigrant communities also are being restricted around what kind of programs are provided to people who are struggling with status.
For sure, I think cultural identity is the biggest thing that we always talk about in the immigrant community. It's who we are, where our roots were, and where our roots are. So a lot of time, young people might be more exposed to certain cultures that in schools or in media that their parents and their families are not as much exposed to. So that's where we see the conflict, as in like there could be argument or disagreement in terms of how young people think, and then more of families think more traditionally or think in a way that that they still used to think back in their cultural. But at the same time too, I think adults, parents are actually also going through that change. So thinking back to my parents, I also do feel like they go through that mix of cultural experience as well, and then they are actually also going through discovering who they are. And so it's really about the support in terms of each one of us finding out who we are and then openly communicating about that.
Before coming here, I expected high school to be a lot like a Mean Girls movie or like, you know, Western cinema. I thought about, you know, kids being bullied. So before coming here, all I wanted to do was fit in and be like everyone else. I didn't want to be different or stand out. So when I came here, that's exactly what I did. I tried to fit in. And in the process of fitting in, I felt like I was losing my identity. I felt so torn between being Canadian and being you know, retaining my identity and my roots. I think everyone feels that way, and it's such a tough choice. And so yes, there's a constant struggle to figure where I belonged. And I think joining YAT after 2 years after moving here, joining YAT really made me realize that I didn't have to be different necessarily. I could be who I am and still fit in. So now, yeah, basically figuring out who I was and the constant struggle between retaining to my identity and habituating into a new culture is really what was a big struggle for me.
I guess it was a little bit hard for me to fit with youth from like Latin countries, I believe sometimes. I don't know. I find it interesting that first of all there wasn't any youth who speak Spanish back when I started high school, and I don't know. I just always find it a little bit more challenging to fit into the Latin culture. I guess a little bit I've been losing part of that my own identity from coming to Canada, but at the same time I think being able to expose to youth from other countries, I'm able to have friends from different places, different countries, different cultures, and I found that I'm still not fitting in any group in particular, but I'm able to be jumping from different groups and be able to trying to fit myself with different type of youth and different people from different places.
Yeah. And I think that's part of like for you to develop your identity right now, right? You're still in that journey. So actually for me, that was many, many years ago when I first came to Canada. So there weren't actually services. There were not a lot of settlement services, especially for youth. I remember there was Success for my family, the organization Success, that was the services for my family, but I don't really remember there was any youth program. And I was actually the opposite of you. Actually, I find that I just kind of stick to my own cultural group. So and then so throughout the whole high school years, I was just with my cultural group, and then actually was unaware of all the other cultures. So actually that's why right now I think it's great that we have multicultural programs that you're experiencing, so that we get exposed to different cultural, different other people's stories, and help each other, support each other. And so for my discovery of my identity, it was kind of back and forth. I moved abroad to teach English after I graduated, and I think that was when I found myself more Canadian, when I was away from Canada. And then when I come back, then I kind of started to think I can be both. I can be Chinese and I can be Canadian, and that's when I kind of start hyphenating the identity Chinese-Canadian.
I think you mentioned about having that idea of becoming Canadian kind of thing. I think in a way I was putting into my mind that I shouldn't be speaking my own language. So in a way, there was a lot of remindment from a lot of people saying, do not stick with the people from your country, because you need to be learning English in a way. So I was, in a way, I was unconsciously being pushed away from people that speak Spanish. And in a way, it affected me in a way that I wasn't able to express and keep practicing the Spanish that I already brought. So sometimes it gets hard for me to be able to express in Spanish. And lately at school, it was great because now at school there several Latin youth came to my school, something that it wasn't before, and I'm connecting back to Latin culture in a way, and people who speak Spanish, and I'm able to again use that beautiful language that I find to just talk and learn from also their cultures. I guess that idea of no, don't speak your Spanish. You need to be Canadian, speak English. It shouldn't be that way. It should be acknowledge your past, your culture, celebrate your language, and keep pushing of mastering that language that you already have, but as well supporting in the fact of learning English, which in a way it gets cut off sometimes. Get the outcomes after finishing the popular theater program. We were able to showcase our play. For the comic one, we were able to show our comic. With the media arts, we were able to show our videos and photograph. So that part of being able to share, I thought was very. I like it really much, and especially because I can go to those pieces that we created and remember those things that I learned and I met. And finally will be what kind of opportunities can they open next. If I wasn't able to take this art comic program, I wasn't able to join the JAT with Vancouver Foundation, and I guess it kind of opens me and to learn about what other opportunities and projects and things can I do and learn and help with. So I think being able to connect with my community, that's another huge beneficial. I always like when youth workers really care about the youth who are participating, and if they find there is an interest specifically for the youth, they're able to connect them. So like, oh, I heard there is one thing from this organization that fits your likes. So that's also really helpful. What I've been noticed from some programs, it's they start to be really limited on who is able to join. For a long time in my immigration process, took longer than usual. So I was always, I never really have a status by just being refugee claimant. By being refugee claimant, you're not a refugee, but you're not permanent resident, but you're not illegal, so you're just in this weird area. And there have been some programs who has been cut the ability for these people to join. When I was younger, I was able to join. That didn't happen. So I was able to take on those activities. Now it has been more selective, mostly to permanent residents. And if I were to that time, I wouldn't be able to join, and I don't find it really fair, because I think who might need mostly those kind of programs will be the people who still in that section of where am I at. So I wish it doesn't become a selective kind of, in a way, is it? I don't know if it's called classism, where you only accept certain people based on a status that is written in a paper, instead of focusing actually on the experience of coming to Canada. So I hope that they're not as selective and being more welcome to people who might need or will need these programs. I think that's a kind of hole that has been happening. And again, if I would be at that age now, I probably wouldn't be able to join those programs.